My name is Billy Rodriguez, and I'm 28 years old. If you had met me a year ago, you would have said I was the kind of woman who had it all figured out. Stable job, calm relationship, a home that smelled faintly of coffee and comfort. And for a while, I believed that too. But peace can end quietly. Sometimes it slips through the cracks without you even hearing it go. Lucas and I had been together for just over 3 years. We met in college. I was studying architecture. He was in marketing. And what started as a project partnership turned into love that felt steady, predictable in the best way. I was the planner, the one who remembered deadlines, paid the bills, kept our little apartment running like a clock. Lucas called me his anchor. He said I kept him grounded when his ideas ran too wild. Funny thing about anchors, though, they keep things steady until someone decides they want to drift. It started small, the kind of changes you almost talk yourself out of noticing. His phone, for one. He used to leave it anywhere kitchen counter, coffee table, even in the bathroom while he showered. But lately, it was always face-down notifications off and glued to his hand. Work stuff, he said once when I caught him typing a little too fast. Work's gotten more demanding lately. Networking never ends. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I tried to believe him, I really did. But then came the events. Lucas worked for a lifestyle brand, so parties and brand gatherings weren't unusual, but they started happening more often, weeknights, late hours, same group of people, always the creative team. He'd come home smelling of whiskey and expensive perfume that wasn't mine. One Friday night, I came home with takeout Thai, his favorite. I texted him, "Dinner's here. When are you home?" No reply. By 8 zeros, the noodles were cold. By 10 zeros, I was reheating them for the second time. At 11:32, his message finally came. "Sorry, babe, lost track of time. Out with the team. Don't wait up. No love you, no call, just that." When he walked through the door after midnight, his laughter was soft, the kind people have when they're trying to pretend nothing's wrong. He kicked off his shoes and froze when he saw me sitting on the couch. "Billy, you're still up." "I wanted to make sure you got home safe," I said. He rolled his eyes a little. "I told you not to wait up. It's fine." He brushed past me, heading to the bathroom. I sat there staring at the food containers, the candle still flickering, and felt something tighten in my chest. Not jealousy, not even anger, just recognition. The quiet knowledge that something was leaving us, and neither of us was fighting to stop it. Over the next few weeks, that distance became a pattern. He stopped talking about his day. He stopped laughing at my jokes. He started scrolling through his phone while we ate dinner, half smiling at messages I wasn't supposed to see. One night I asked softly, "Are we okay?" He sighed. Not sadly, but like I'd just asked him for a favor. "Billy, not everything has to be a crisis. I've just been stressed. Can I have a bad week without it turning into a relationship talk?" That was Lucas, calm, dismissive, perfectly composed. He could twist any confrontation into me being the problem. I started wondering if maybe I was too sensitive, too anxious. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe the man I fell in love with was still there. But trust dies quietly in glances avoided and laughs shared with someone else. One night, as he scrolled through his phone, his reflection caught in the TV screen. I watched his smile fade when he noticed me watching. "You're staring again," he said. Not even looking up, I was just thinking, I murmured. "About what?" "About how far we've drifted without noticing." He let out a small laugh, humorless. "You always overthink." And maybe I did. But overthinking is just intuition waiting for confirmation. That night, I pretended to sleep while he texted someone until nearly 2:00 a.m. The next morning, he left early, said he had a meeting. His phone buzzed twice on the counter. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The way he looked back at me before leaving, cautious, guilty, tired, told me everything. Later that day, I sat by the window with my coffee growing cold and whispered to myself, "Whatever this is, it's already ending." And though I didn't know it then, that quiet morning marked the beginning of the unraveling. Saturday morning. The sunlight filtering through the blinds painted thin golden lines across our living room. The kind of morning that usually felt warm, safe. But that day, the air was heavy. Lucas came out of the bedroom wearing one of my hoodies, the same gray one he used to steal because it smelled like me. He looked calm, too calm, like someone who had practiced what they were about to say. "Can we talk?" Those 3 words. The most harmless, most terrifying phrase in any relationship. I nodded slowly. "Sure." He sat down across from me, hands clasped together, eyes avoiding mine. I could feel the shift before he said it. The careful pause, the rehearsed tone, the kind of silence that prepares for a wound. I think I need a break, he said finally. The words didn't register at first. A break, I repeated. From what? From us, he said like it was obvious. I need time to figure myself out. Lately, I don't even know who I am anymore. I stared at him. This was the same man who once told me he'd never want to figure himself out without me there. Now he looked at me like I was part of what he needed to escape. So I said softly, "You don't know who you are, so you're taking a break from the one person who actually knows you best." His jaw tightened. "See, this is what I mean. You make everything sound like I'm doing something wrong. I just need space." I tried to stay calm. "You already have space, Lucas. You go out with your coworkers 3 times a week. You come home after midnight. I don't check your phone. I don't ask questions. What kind of space do you still need?" He exhaled sharply, like I was exhausting him. "You don't get it. It's not about you. I just need to focus on myself for a while." "And this isn't a breakup?" I asked quietly. His head shot up too fast. "No, God. Billy, why do you always assume the worst? I just need a pause. Just no pressure for a bit, okay?" His hands were trembling. Not from fear, from guilt. That was the thing about Lucas. He was good at pretending honesty while hiding cowardice behind soft words. I hesitated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you seeing someone else?" His laugh was sharp, almost cruel. "Billy, not everything is about cheating. You really need to work on your trust issues." There it was, the deflection. Turn the suspicion back on me. Twist the knife, but make it sound like therapy. "I don't have trust issues," I said evenly. "I have instincts." He stood up abruptly, crossing his arms. "This is exactly why I need a break. Every conversation turns into an interrogation." Silence fell between us, the kind that hums loud and hollow. That was when I noticed the duffel bag by the couch, already packed. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked quietly. He froze for half a second. "I told Eric I might crash at his place for a bit, just until I clear my head." Eric. The same friend. He always mentioned, the one whose friends list included Emily, his ex. "Does Eric know you're coming as a friend?" I asked, "or as someone newly single?" He rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic again." "No," I said, standing slowly. "I'm just trying to be clear. Because you say you need space, but your bag was packed before you even spoke to me. That doesn't sound like figuring yourself out, Lucas. That sounds like running away." He slung the strap over his shoulder and finally looked me in the eyes. "I don't expect you to understand right now, but maybe after some time apart, we'll be better for it." I wanted to argue, to scream, to make him stay, but something inside me stopped. A quiet voice that said, "Don't beg someone to love you properly." So instead I nodded. "Okay," I said softly. "Take all the time you need." He blinked, clearly not expecting that. His expression flickered confusion, maybe guilt. "Thank you," he murmured. He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back and added, "Don't wait for me. Okay, just do your thing for a while." I smiled faintly. "I already am." He frowned like he wanted to say something else but didn't. Then he left. The door shut quietly. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the empty space he'd left behind. The air still smelled like his cologne. The sunlight still painted gold across the floor. And I realized something painful but clear. Lucas didn't need space. He needed freedom from accountability. And in his leaving, he'd given me something to freedom from pretending everything was fine. 3 days. That's how long it took for space to turn into betrayal. At first, I kept myself busy. Work, cleaning, running errands that didn't matter. I told myself I wouldn't chase him. He wanted distance. Fine. I'd give him all the space in the world. But silence can be louder than arguments. Every time I walked into the apartment, it felt like walking into a paused memory. His mug still in the sink, his jacket still hanging by the door, his cologne still faint in the air like a ghost I hadn't learned to ignore yet. On the 3rd afternoon, I made a mistake. I opened Instagram. I wasn't looking for him, not really. Just scrolling, trying to fill a quiet lunch break. And then there it was, a photo from Emily, his ex. A wooden cabin deck, soft mountain light, a steaming cup of coffee on the railing. And sitting there, half wrapped in a blanket, was a silhouette I knew too well. Lucas. He was turned slightly away from the camera, but the outline of his jaw, the messy brown hair, even the hoodie, my hoodie, were unmistakable. The caption read, "Some things just make sense again." I stared at it so long my coffee went cold. For a few seconds I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was old, maybe it wasn't him. Maybe she'd just happened to post a look-alike. But then I saw the comments. "Lucas' piece feels good. Emily. So does honesty." Heart emoji. No tags, no secrecy, no shame. It wasn't the kind of picture that made you furious. It was the kind that made you hollow, because it confirmed what you already knew, but hadn't wanted to admit the person you loved was already gone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt still, like my heart had been emptied out, leaving nothing but quiet. When I finally stood up, I walked to the bedroom, took out a box, and began to gather his things. Not angrily, methodically. The watch I bought him on our second anniversary. The half-empty bottle of cologne he left in the bathroom. His hairbrush, his favorite mug, the books he never returned to their shelves. Every trace of him I placed in that box. When I was done, I set it in the corner of the spare room, closed the door, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Then I sat by the window with my phone. I opened his contact, hovered over his name, and pressed delete. Then Instagram, unfollow. Facebook, remove friend. No announcement, no goodbye, just gone. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the couch, and whispered to the empty room. You said you needed space. Looks like you found it right next to her. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt clean, like starting over even if I didn't know what that meant yet. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that cabin, the mug, the blanket, the caption. But instead of wondering what they were doing there, I kept thinking about his words. I need to figure myself out. I need space. I need clarity. All of it, I realized, was just a poetic way of saying I don't want to be accountable for how I hurt you. By sunrise, the sadness had shifted into something colder, not bitterness, just clarity. Lucas hadn't left to find himself. He'd left because he didn't want to look at the version of himself that I made visible, the selfish, cowardly one hiding behind the language of healing. I made coffee and drank it in silence. The city outside was waking up oblivious to the quiet war that had ended in my living room. Before heading to work, I took one last look at the door. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice teasing me, saying, "You worry too much." But this time I smiled. Because worrying was over. Caring was over. Whatever this thing between us had been, it was over. And for the first time since he left, I didn't feel like the abandoned one. He was. Because he walked away from peace, and I walked into freedom. A week passed. 7 quiet days where my phone didn't light up with his name, and for once I didn't hope that it would. The first 2 mornings felt strange, like living without background noise. No half-hearted goodbyes before work, no love you muttered through toothpaste. Just me, my coffee, and the kind of silence that wasn't empty anymore. It was healing. By day 3, I started doing small things I hadn't realized I'd stopped doing for him. Cooking meals I actually liked instead of whatever he preferred. Playing soft jazz while I showered. Singing off-key unashamed because there was no one around to roll their eyes at me. Freedom. I was learning wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was a playlist playing in a clean apartment and no one to apologize to for the volume. Then, on the 8th day, my phone buzzed. Lucas, hey, I've been thinking about you. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long minute, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I locked my phone and set it face down. I didn't delete it, not yet. I just didn't respond. An hour later, another ping. Lucas, please, I just want to explain. Explain what? That space was code for weekend getaway with your ex. That betrayal somehow counted as personal growth. I muted his number. Over the next few days, the messages kept trickling in like apologies disguised as curiosity. Lucas. It wasn't what it looked like. Lucas, I just needed closure with her. Lucas. You know I'd never mean to hurt you. Closure. That word again. Funny how people always use it when they've already done the damage. Each message came softer than the last, like he thought lowering his tone could undo what he did. But I didn't reply. Not once. Instead, I filled my time with something better myself. I started running again. Not far, not fast. Just enough to feel my lungs work to remember what control over my body felt like. I painted clumsy at first, but it helped. Colors were simpler than people. You could mix them, change them, and they'd never lie to you about what they'd become. My friends noticed the difference before I did. You seem lighter, one of them said during brunch, like you're not carrying something heavy anymore. I smiled. Maybe I'm not. That night I poured a glass of wine, cooked dinner, and sat by the window while the city lights blinked awake. I realized I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes anymore. For the first time in months, I was living in my own moment, not waiting for a text, not guessing someone else's intentions. Just here. Peace, I learned, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives, quietly sits next to you, and lets you breathe. 2 weeks after the breakup, my boss stopped by my desk. Billy, I don't know what changed, but your work lately, it's sharper. You're focused again. I smiled faintly. Guess I just cleared some distractions. That night I got another message. This time it wasn't words, it was a photo. Lucas. Alone. The same cabin I'd seen before, but this time the caption read, "Sometimes you realize too late what you left behind." I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just nothing. Because the truth was, I wasn't something he left behind. I was something he couldn't carry, not with the kind of shallow hands that let go when things get heavy. I turned off my phone and went to bed early. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my sheets, and for once I didn't wake up reaching for anyone. I didn't wake up missing him. And that was when I knew I was done healing from what he did. Now I was healing from who I let myself become while trying to keep him. It had been almost a month since Lucas walked out of my life with his duffel bag and carefully rehearsed lies. A month of silence, peace, and learning what my own company sounded like. Then one evening, just as I was coming home from work, I saw him. He was sitting on the steps outside my apartment building, head down, hoodie up, elbows resting on his knees like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. The man who once radiated easy confidence now looked small. When he lifted his head and our eyes met, my stomach didn't twist like it used to. It just went still. "Billy," he said, standing quickly, voice softer than I remembered. "Hey." I kept my distance. "What are you doing here?" He swallowed, rubbing his hands together. "I didn't know how else to reach you. You blocked me everywhere." "That should have told you everything you needed to know," I said. He winced like the words hit something raw. "Please, just 5 minutes. I just need to explain." I leaned against the railing, folding my arms. "You've had weeks to explain. You chose silence." He nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I know. I messed up, Billy. I thought I needed space, and I thought going to Emily would help me figure things out. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I didn't mean for it to." His voice cracked slightly. "Turn into what it did." I stayed quiet. He stepped closer, desperate now. "She reached out to me after I posted about us. Said she just wanted to talk to make sure I was okay. I thought closure would help me move on, but it didn't. It just made me realize how badly I'd screwed up with you." I let out a quiet breath. Closure. That word again, the one people use when they want to sound mature about their selfishness. "I missed you the second I left," he said, eyes glassy. "You were always the one who grounded me, the one who saw me for who I really am. Emily doesn't even know me anymore, not like you do." I tilted my head slightly. "You're right. I did see you. That's the problem." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I saw the parts you hide behind charm," I said calmly. "The part of you that confuses chaos with passion, that calls running away self-discovery. You wanted to be loved without being held accountable. And when I stopped making excuses for you, you called it pressure." "Billy, please," he said, stepping closer. "You don't mean that. We can fix this. We've been through so much together." I smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "You mean I've carried you through so much?" He blinked, stunned. "You wanted space, Lucas. Then you filled it with her. That's not growth. That's cowardice dressed up as clarity." He looked like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Just silence. I could see the panic creeping into his eyes, the realization that I wasn't here to be persuaded anymore. "I didn't know what I wanted," he whispered. "But I do now. I want you. I want us." I let out a small laugh, not bitter, just tired. "No, Lucas, you don't want me. You want what I gave you, the peace, the patience, the version of yourself that felt easy when I was around." He shook his head, voice trembling. "You don't even want to try." "I already did," I said softly. "For years. You just didn't notice until it was too late." He blinked hard and I could see his eyes watering. "I can't believe you're just giving up on us." "I didn't give up," I replied, turning toward my door. "You ended it the moment you chose someone else and called it healing." "Billy, please," he said, his voice breaking. "Just talk to me. I'll do anything." I turned back, meeting his eyes one last time. "You already did everything, Lucas. That's the problem." I opened the door and stepped inside. Through the glass, I saw him sit back down on the steps, burying his face in his hands. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered that cabin, his laughter, her hand on his sleeve, the caption about things making sense again. And I realized something simple and devastating. I wasn't walking away from love. I was walking away from the illusion of it. That night, for the first time in months, I slept through until morning. No dreams, no flashbacks, just peace. 2 weeks passed after that night on the steps. Lucas didn't show up again. No messages, no calls, just absence. And in that silence, I found something better than closure indifference. It didn't happen overnight. The first few days, I still expected to see his name flash across my screen, but as the hours stretched and the world stayed quiet, my mind did something I hadn't expected. It moved on without asking my permission. I started running every morning before sunrise. The city was half asleep, the air cool, the streets empty. There was something comforting about being the only one awake, like I'd reclaimed a small piece of the world he'd taken from me. Sometimes I'd pass by the coffee shop we used to go to. The barista would wave, I'd wave back. That was it. No ache, no nostalgia, just life continuing. Then came the ripple effect, the aftershocks of his regret trying to find their way back to me. A mutual friend, Tara, texted one evening. Hey, just a heads up, Lucas isn't doing well. He's been asking about you. I stared at the message for a few seconds, then replied simply, I hope he figures himself out. That's what he wanted, right? She didn't reply after that. A few days later, I opened Instagram. Lucas had returned to posting not the smiling, polished posts from before, but the kind drenched in quiet desperation. A dimly lit selfie eyes red captioned, Sometimes you don't realize what you had until it's gone. Another one a quote over a black background. The hardest part is forgiving yourself. And my personal favorite, love shouldn't be conditional. I didn't comment. I just scrolled past and smiled. Because for the first time, none of it felt aimed at me. It was just noise, the sound of someone trying to make the world feel sorry for them after burning it down. I was done being the audience to his regret. One evening, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but curiosity made me listen later just once. His voice, tired, trembling, yet still trying to sound composed. Hey, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm not doing this to get you back. I just want to apologize properly. Maybe we could grab a coffee talk like adults. Please. I deleted it halfway through. The next day, my sister called. You'll never guess who I ran into at the cafe, she said. Let me guess. I sighed. Lucas. She laughed dryly. He told me he was worried about you. I told him, funny, you didn't look too worried when you were at that cabin. He didn't say much after that. I couldn't help but smile. My sister always did have sharper edges than me. But apparently Lucas wasn't finished. A week later, I walked out of my office building to find him standing by my car. He looked thinner, eyes, hollow expression, sharp with frustration. You've made your point, he said bitterly as I approached. My point, I repeated. That you're done. That you're too good to even talk to me. His voice was strained, equal parts anger and self-pity, the kind of tone that used to make me want to soothe him. But not anymore. I never said I was too good, Lucas, I said evenly. I just stopped letting you make me feel like I wasn't enough. His eyes narrowed. You think you're better than me now? I don't think about you enough to compare, I replied. That hit him harder than I expected. His jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists. You can't just erase me, he snapped. We had a life together. No, I said calmly. We had a version of one, the version you edited whenever it suited you. He stared at me for a long moment, anger breaking into disbelief. You'll regret this one day, he muttered. You'll see who really cared. I met his gaze steadily. I already saw, I said quietly. That's why I left. I got into my car and closed the door. He stood there on the sidewalk watching as I drove away. That was the last time I ever saw him in person. It was strange realizing that the final goodbye wasn't dramatic. No tears, no shouting, no closure speech, just a clean exit. After that, the world moved on without him. Our mutual friends stopped mentioning his name. Someone told me he quit his job after a situation with HR. Apparently he showed up drunk one afternoon and caused a scene. I didn't feel vindicated, just detached. Karma, it seemed, didn't need my help. As for me, I was thriving quietly. Work had become something I looked forward to again. I'd signed up for a weekend art class, repainted my apartment, and filled it with plants and music. Peace, I learned, doesn't shout. It hums. One night, as I stood by the window watching city lights blink like tiny stars, I realized something. I hadn't just moved on from Lucas. I had moved on from the version of myself who thought love meant endurance. Sometimes all it takes to heal is one final act of letting go and meaning it. 6 months later, the woman staring back at me in the mirror barely resembled the one who used to check her phone every 5 minutes waiting for a man to decide if she mattered. My hair was shorter now, my eyes softer but clearer. My mornings no longer began with anxious thoughts about someone else's moods. They began with sunlight music and quiet gratitude. The funny thing about peace is that it doesn't arrive with fanfare. It slips in one morning while you're making coffee and you suddenly realize you haven't thought about him in weeks. I'd moved into a new apartment on the other side of town. Bigger, brighter, mine. The walls were white. The windows overlooked a park, and the only toothbrush by the sink was my own. I didn't avoid the memories anymore. I just outgrew them. Sometimes I'd pass the coffee shop where Lucas and I used to meet after work. I'd see couples sitting in the same seats we once did, laughing, holding hands, and I'd feel nothing but quiet appreciation that once upon a time I'd loved that deeply, even if it ended painfully. Because pain, when you survive it, becomes a teacher. My art instructor once said, "You can't paint light without understanding shadows." And I think that's what Lucas taught me what my shadows look like. I wasn't naive anymore. I didn't romanticize people's healing journeys or believe every apology was redemption. I learned to tell the difference between someone who was lost and someone who was just wandering from responsibility. One afternoon, Tara, the mutual friend who used to update me about Lucas, messaged again. "You probably don't care, but Lucas moved away. Got a new job somewhere up north. He's quiet these days." I typed, then deleted several responses before settling on one. "I hope he finds what he was looking for." And I meant it, not out of forgiveness, out of freedom. That evening, I went for a walk through the park near my new place. The same kind of park where Lucas once told me he saw his future with me. The air was crisp, the sky painted gold with sunset. Couples passed me, children laughed, a dog barked in the distance. And for a brief moment, I thought about how easily life fills itself again when you stop holding space for someone who left. I sat on a bench and took out my sketchbook. Something I'd stopped doing years ago, when life became all about schedules, work, and maintaining a love that was slowly bleeding out. Now my sketches were full of color, of faces light and motion, not perfect but alive. A little boy running after a balloon caught my attention. His laughter echoed through the park. His mother trailed behind, smiling. The balloon slipped from his grip, floating higher, higher, gone. He cried for a moment, then saw another balloon vendor nearby and immediately started laughing again. It hit me then, that's how healing works. You lose something you thought you couldn't live without, and then one day, without realizing when it happened, you find joy again. As I packed up my things and stood to leave, my phone buzzed a notification from a new follower. A man named Adrian had liked one of my paintings online, the one titled Clarity. He'd commented, "This feels peaceful, like the end of something heavy." I smiled to myself, not because of the comment, but because he was right. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered into the dark, "Thank you, Lucas. Not for loving me, not for leaving me, but for showing me what I'll never settle for again." They say healing is messy, but sometimes it's simple. You stop chasing closure from people who benefit from your confusion. You stop explaining pain to those who caused it, and you finally give that closure to yourself. Because love isn't proven by how much you endure, it's shown by how peacefully you can walk away when endurance stops being love. I used to think endings were loud, slamming doors, shouted words, broken hearts. But real endings are quiet. It's the morning you wake up and realize you don't need their apology anymore. It's the moment you laugh again genuinely, without guilt. And that's when you know you didn't lose them. You found yourself. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you take back someone who betrayed your trust, or let them learn what losing you really means? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.